And
We
Daryl,
typically go ahead.
even though I'm recording, it does say the recording will be saved in your Google Drive. So
Okay, very good.
since you're the host.
We typically get a lot more people on here for these lunch and learns, but I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully more people can join as we go forward. So today we have Chris Dew from Convey 911. Chris, did I get the name of the company right?
You did. Convey 911, correct.
Okay, great. So we're going to be talking about bridging the language barrier. And Chris, I will turn it over to you. And you should also have the ability to present if you've got a slide deck.
Yep. Yeah, I'll turn it on in 1 second. So thank you, Daryl. And thank you, everybody, for allowing us to be here and giving us some time today. We're really appreciative of that. So I'll tell you a little bit about us and our who's on the line with our company. And I'm going to share my screen as I'm doing that. So myself, I'm the director of sales for Convey 911. And then also along with us, we have Jeff Bruns, who is our CEO and co-founder and kind of our tech guru behind the whole thing. Lisa Reagan is our other co-founder, and she has a pretty decent background in police. And then Colleen Mulvihill, who's also one of our partners, she has also a very decent background in public safety, as we all do. So we all come from a public safety background. Myself, fire department for 28 years, both career and volunteer. So a little bit about Convey. We came together to kind of solve a problem in the 911 space and through public sector in general, and that's communicating with people that don't have the ability to pick up the phone and communicate with us. This is, we've seen this problem from many angles, especially from us from the responder side, but we also know it pretty well in the PSAP. Can everybody see my screen okay? I just want to make sure that that's up.
Yep, I got you.
Cool. All right, great. So yeah, so this is it. So this is what we wanted to talk about is how do we do something? How do we communicate with people that can't communicate with us? And if you kind of put yourself in their shoes, somebody who doesn't have the ability because of a language barrier to pick up the phone, dial 911 or 311 or whatever that is to report a problem. How can we fix that issue? I kind of look at it, and it's not just the 911, it's not just the emergency. It's what if their trash didn't get picked up? What if there is a water main break on their street? There's so many barriers that don't allow those people to communicate with us, with 911, or with public sector services, and we want to figure out a way to solve that. So 66 million people in the U.S. speak a language other than English in their home, and this number is growing dramatically. And we all know this. Anybody who's in a PSAP and deals with this regularly sees that these numbers are going up. The amount of the diversity in the languages that we're seeing is increasing as more people are coming to this country. So it's not just Spanish anymore. It's not just Chinese anymore. There is just an enormous growth in the diversity of languages that we encounter daily. So how do we handle this? How do we set ourselves up to be able to provide them the same services that we provide everybody else? So I'm going to let Colleen kind of jump in here real quick because I think she's got a really good take on this, and I'll kind of let her tell her quick story. So Colleen, are you good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. I started my career in public safety back in 1989 as a 911 call taker and fire dispatcher in an agency outside of Baltimore that sits along the Interstate 95 corridor between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So even back in the late 80s, we started to see a lot of diversity as far as our population goes in the county. And with that came some calls to 911 with folks that did not speak English. So just real quick, I wanted to tell a quick story about the first time that I ever answered a phone call from someone who didn't speak English. Those of you that have been in a PSAP and have answered that phone, when you pick it up and that person on the other end of the line is screaming and in such distress that it kind of makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. You know it's something serious is going on. And she knew one word in English that she kept repeating to me, and that was help. And I had to do what I was trained to do. And I got a language line on and asked for a human-based interpreter, which took some time. And then they asked me, well, what language is it that you need the interpreter for? And I had no idea. I mean, to me, it sounded like it was Chinese. So that's what I said. I said, I think maybe it's Chinese, but I don't know. So they went through the process of finding a Chinese interpreter to get on the line. And you can probably guess the rest of the story. It wasn't Chinese at all. It was Korean. And so they then had to find a Korean speaking interpreter. So this whole incident took about what seemed like forever, but I'm sure it was probably under 10 minutes of time. But then I went back into the 911 center in 2017, only to learn that this process hasn't changed at all. So we've been dealing with the same process for 30 years, 30 plus years now, which is what makes me so passionate about what we've developed here at Convey 911 and how we are helping to bridge these language gaps. So I'll hand it back over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Colleen. Appreciate it. Real quick one from the jurisdiction that Colleen and I both came from. In the mid 80s, had actually gone mid 80s through early 90s, went to Korea and advertised for people of Korean descent to move to Howard County, Maryland, and it actually calls it's one of the largest Korean populations in the country now, in Howard County, Maryland. So it was a problem that started. It wasn't a problem. It was just something that happened then, that we had this huge influx of Korean speaking people into our area, and we had to figure out a way to accommodate them and to be able to communicate with them. So this is a bold statement, but we find it pretty true. When there is this inability for people to communicate with us, not just 911, but again, all public sector, all government services, it really does create a lack of trust. And then when that lack of trust occurs, people they don't call anymore. They don't reach out because they know they can't lie. What's the point? What's the point of picking up the phone and calling if I know I can't speak to somebody there? So they stop calling, and maybe they find other ways and means to get their problem solved. So really what it does is it creates this lack of services that could be available to these marginalized communities if we had a way on the front end to communicate with them. We all know this. So this is kind of the big problem. And this isn't just language. This is what we're all facing in the PSAPs and ECCs across the country. The call volume is going up. It's going up drastically. Since the cellular phones mobile phones became popular, we all saw those numbers increase dramatically. But it's still going up as populations increase. And then when we throw in something that everyone across the country is facing in staffing shortages, that it's becoming harder and harder to answer these calls in the time that's allotted for us. Getting that 90%, 15 seconds or less is really difficult. We're seeing long queue times. We're seeing long hold times. Text to 911 coming in. That's something that, in my opinion, we as an industry have been slow to promote, but it is starting to take off. And what we think, in our opinion, is that the people that could truly benefit for text to 911 are the people who, again, don't have the ability to pick up the phone and call because of whether it's a language issue, whether they're nonverbal, whatever those reasons are. These are the people that really, really could benefit text to 911 if it's built in a way that it enables them to communicate with us. So when all of those problems going on, this is the one that throws the wrench into the whole thing. When somebody does call, in the scenario that Colleen described, when somebody picks up that phone and calls 911 and has a language barrier, it overemphasizes how long it takes to get that information, how long it takes us to get the what and the where, and then the who as quickly as possible so we can get the right resources to the right people in the right amount of time. And everybody's still using the same platform, whether it's Language Line, Voyance, or some form of human-based interpreter. We have to figure out the language. We've got to get that interpreter on the phone. We have to understand the language they're saying, find an interpreter that speaks that language, get them on, and then we need to get that interpreter to get that information to us right away so we can get the proper services routed to these people. And this takes a long time. Even in, I would say, a common language like Spanish, it still takes time. When we get to some of the more fringe languages, it takes a long time to just figure out what that language is, what that person is speaking, in order to find an interpreter for it. So here's another issue that we've heard so many stories about. What the person who's answering the phone, the interpreter who is answering the phone, can we verify that they're certified in public safety? Do they know what they're answering for? We know a lot of these companies, a lot of these human-based interpretation companies, the person who's answering, let's say for Spanish, they may have picked up the phone 4 times that morning and talked to banks and helped done an interpretation for a bank. That 5th call may be a 911 call. And do they know that that call coming in is a 911 call? One of the worst stories we've heard, and we tell it, it's a horror story we tell pretty often, but it really resonates, is we were talking to a 911 specialist up in State College, Pennsylvania. And she said she had gotten a call, and I believe it was Spanish, but she was having trouble. She couldn't communicate with the caller. She finally got a Spanish interpreter on the line and realized that it was a mom calling for a young daughter who wasn't breathing. So she did what she's trained to do and went into it and started giving CPR instructions to the interpreter over the phone. And she said that she could tell the interpreter flipped out, didn't like, kind of got the severity of the situation, said, I can't do this. I'm not trained to do this. This isn't what I signed up for. And then hung up, disconnected the line, and the call taker was back to square one, unable to communicate with his mother. And that's just unacceptable. It can't happen today. We have to put in things we have to put in processes that allow that to never happen again. And the other thing is, we hear this a lot when somebody does get on a call, an interpreter gets on, there may be a 5-minute conversation that goes on between the interpreter and the caller, while the call taker is sitting there screaming on the other end, like, hey guys, I need the what and the where right now. I've got to get this information. And then if something goes wrong, if you have a problem with that interpreter, is there a process to not use that interpreter again? How can we put things into place? This is the goal. This is what we all wish we could do. We wish we could answer the phone, understand their language, speak their language to them in any given moment. And is it a possibility? I don't know. I think we're going to put in things that are going to allow this to happen. But this will be the end goal. So does the technology exist? It does. The technology is here. We can build in processes. We can put in workflows that use technology first and human-based interpreters also, that gives us the ability to communicate with these citizens, with these community members. AI and machine-based learning is taking off. It really can help bridge these language gaps to give people a means of communicating with us in a way that they haven't been able to before. So again, yeah, can technology solve it? We can. We think it truly can. Can we enable the workflow? We can. We can start. There's multiple means of communication that we can put into play that will enable these people and us to communicate seamlessly, instantaneously, so we can get the right resources to the right people in the right amount of time. So our mission here, is enabling public safety, public sector to communicate in any language over multiple mediums. So that's text, video, and voice as we see it. That's what we're striving to build. That's what we're striving to get into play across the country so we can help these people out. So a cloud communication language translation platform. It has SMS and MMS messaging, live streaming video with built-in translation transcription. So when we have a video session, somebody is speaking Spanish on their end, we're seeing that transcription on our end in English and vice versa. We're speaking English, they're seeing it in their native language on their end. Location services, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then being able to bake all of this into a mobile application that we can put in the hands of our first responders, because we know somebody calls 911 and we have a language issue with them in the PSAP, most likely when our first responders get to them in the field, that language issue is still going to be there. So I'm going to cue in Jeff, as he is the technology genius that's kind of behind all of this, so we can talk about kind of the platform and what it is. Jeff, you there? Did I lose Jeffrey? Okay, he may be having trouble getting one. Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah, Jeff looks
Yeah, we
like he's
can.
there. He's just
Yeah, we can
muted.
hear you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. He may be tied up on something. But yeah, so basically the platform, it's a cloud-based, cloud agnostic, we do not have a single point of failure. We function in all clouds. So if one cloud fails, we fail over to another cloud. The PSAP never knows it happens. There's no on-premise hardware that needs to be done. It's simple to integrate. It's simple to turn on. The entire platform is designed to be, we like to say, plug and play. We can turn it on, we can plug it in, we can work with anything. It's an integration platform that's designed to work seamlessly with all other software and devices that you have. So whether it's call handling, CAD, we want to be able to plug in and seamlessly work. And then we're using best in practice technology that's available to us. So when we do translations, we're not doing the translation ourselves. That's not our specialty. What we're doing is plugging into the APIs, the translation APIs of all of the major players out there, whether it's Google, whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, IBM Watson. We're using the technology that's available to do these. And we're doing it because we know that Google Translate may do pretty well, and most people try to rely on it, but it's not the best for every language. So we know that the multiple languages are out there. Google Translate may be good for one. Watson may be good for another one. AWS may be the best for another one. So we're bringing all of that together, and that's kind of how we're doing our translation, to put a foolproof way of making sure that the translations are accurate. So kind of talk about the way the technology works and kind of the value props of the technology that's there and how we can utilize it. So the first one, SMS, MMS, text to 911. So this is text to 911 has been around for a little while. This is where we believe we can kind of do the most good. Giving people the ability to text in their native language, have it translated and received in the PSAP, in the ECC, in English, and then that response from the call taker who's responding in English being back received on the caller's device in their native language. It's a bidirectional text conversation that both sides are seeing their native language, and it just allows for these people to be able to talk instantaneously, seamlessly. We can do this, like I said, text to 911 is there. We can also do this through just a 10-digit number. So it doesn't have to be text to 911. It can be text to, a number that you already have in your PSAP. What it also does is it gives the ability to route some of those texts and some of those calls to a number that isn't an emergency. So again, a kind of a 311 model, or a Department of Public Works, or however you may look at it. These people now have the ability to text and say, hey, there's a water main break on my street, without having to tie up a 911 dispatcher. We can stand up multiple lines, multiple numbers coming in, and these people now have the ability to reach out through SMS, MMS messaging in their native language. There's no app involved. They don't have to download anything. They can just text in their language to the number. It's received, translated back and forth, a bidirectional conversation. So location services. So if it's a 911 call, if it's a 911 text, we're going to get this. We're going to know where they are through partnerships with Rapid SOS and others. We're able to get the real-time location of these people. But what if it's not a 911 call? What if it's initiated from the PSAP to the caller? We had a great story here in Baltimore. There was a large park just outside the city that a lady who was Korean descent, elderly, went for a walk in the park. The sun was going down. It was getting late. She contacted her daughter and she was lost. She's not sure where I'm at. I know I'm in the park. It's a very large park. Her daughter called 911, said, hey, we don't know where she's at, but we know she's in the park somewhere, and she doesn't speak English. So that's why she didn't call 911 in the first place. So what the city PSAP did was they actually texted her in her language, sent her a link, She clicked on it. She opened it because she could understand, click on this link because it was all in her language. And then we used the location services to figure out where she was, and they were able to find her and get her out of the park and get her home safely. It's a very great story of a way to communicate with people to get them their information. One of the things that our location services has that we're really proud of is Z-Axis. So a partnership with NextNav. And this is great because not only now are we able to communicate with people, we're able to find out where they are when they're in a large building, a building that's, so this is something that 911 has been wanting for years. It's coming out. It's a great tool that now we can use technology to say when somebody's calling or texting, we can say, okay, you're X and Y, but where are you at Z? Because if that building at X and Y is 25 stories high, but now through weather and barometric pressure, we can say, okay, you're 150 feet above terrain. That's roughly going to put you on the 15th floor. So now we have a better idea where in that large building you are. So something that's pretty proud. So, and then video. So video is a tool. I think you can hear from different people in different PSAPs, and we hear this a lot. Some are reluctant to use live streaming video to the 911 center, and some people are very willing. Some people are like, let's go, let's roll with it. It is a great tool. And one of the ways that we think it's a really good tool is being able to have language translation with transcription baked right into it. So being able to have a video session where somebody on the other end of the phone is talking to you in their native language, and you're able to see a closed caption kind of transcription coming across the screen in English of what they're saying. And then when you speak in English, they're able to see it on their screen in their native language. So it just creates this, again, another way for a bidirectional translated conversation to happen. And then there's an app for that. All of this is going to be baked into an app. And we have a first iteration already that gives responders the ability to have a phone or a video call with an interpreter right on the scene, right through their device. And then the same technology that's in the video translation transcription is going to be baked into the app. So you're going to have the ability, officer, citizen, or responder, community member are going to have the ability to have a bidirectional translated conversation using their devices. And then to bookend the whole thing, we know the technology is not going to get us all the way every time. We think it's an amazing stopgap. We think it's an amazing thing that we can now put these things like texting and video in play and have these bidirectional conversations with our community members. But we know sometimes we're going to need that extra step. So there is a great human-based interpreter service. And it's kind of, we look at it, it's more technology driven than what's been around in the past. It's kind of like the Uber or Lyft for human-based interpreters. If we know the language, when we know the language and we know we need a person, it's a single click, a button, and we're going to get somebody on the phone within 20 to 30 seconds, and they're going to be credentialed in or certified in the space that they're answering. So they have to be certified in public safety or health to answer a call coming from a 911 center. If they're not, if they're, let's say, an interpreter who only does legal work for law firms, they're not going to get that call. It's not going to come to them. So we don't have that problem of getting somebody on the phone who's going to flip out when they have to give CPR instructions. Through this, we also have American Sign, ASL, Spanish Sign Language, and Japanese Sign Language, I believe. So being able to bring in a video session, a three-way video session with an interpreter in ASL or Spanish Sign Language is really, really beneficial. So how do we make it work? So, and this is kind of bringing the whole thing back together. So we think there's three major steps in order to kind of bridge this language gap, to make sure that we're communicating with our communities in their languages. So the first one is we've got to get the technology out there. It's got to be in the PSAPs. We've got to have the PSAPs understand that this is needed. It's not something that's a trend. It's not going to go away. We have to get it in there. And it's new. It's new. So we do need some leading edge thinkers. We need problem solvers, and we need PSAP directors, we need telecommunicators who are willing to embrace new emerging technology so we can get this in their hands and they can start using it. It's there. It's great. It just has to be used. So the second step to making this work, and this is community outreach. If you can have all the technology that exists in the world, but if the community doesn't know it's available, it's useless. So once it's in the PSAP, once it's available, we've got to get out to our communities and we've got to let them know, hey, we can now talk to you. We can now, if we know that there's a huge Burmese community down the road. We can go to that. We can use our community outreach methods that we most likely already have in place through our police departments, fire departments. And we can go to them and say, hey, listen, guys, we can now talk to you in your language immediately. Text us in your language. We'll get it. We'll be able to respond and we'll get the right help to you as soon as possible, as soon as we can. And then the feedback loop. And this is a super important thing. Once the technology is being used, once the communities are using it and know it's there, we've got to be able, we're going to work to improve it because everything can be improved. So we need that feedback loop. We need to say, hey, we tried this, it didn't work. Or this language seems to have some issues when it's being translated. Maybe there's a different API that we can call on to translate that language a little bit better. But without that feedback loop, we think everything's going fine. We don't know. So it's all part to bring it kind of full circle so we can continue to make this better as we go forward. So kind of to sum up everything, some of the partnerships and associations that we're proud of, IGES being a really good one. That if you're not familiar with IGES, they're a think tank just outside of DC, and they have put together some pretty cool stuff, especially in the realm of text to 911 with language translation. They have kind of written a policy on it. Hopefully it'll be in adoption pretty soon, and we've kind of, our platform and everything that we have built is kind of based around the IGES platform. So they're a really good partner and they're a really good source of information for not the 911 community. So something to look into. Again, this is kind of the benefits, the stuff that's out there right now, the SMS and MMS, text to 911, video, streaming video to the 911 center, the location, and then, we're beta testing right now the voice transcription and translation in video. And pretty soon we're going to have that. Once it's kind of in video, we're going to turn that into and put it in the PSAP as a call. So when somebody calls and they're not English speaking, you'll be able to hit a speed dial button on your console, ring to us, and our technology will answer, and you'll get that same voice translation and transcription right on your screen of what they're saying. So that's coming soon, and we're really excited about it, and it's going to be a pretty incredible thing that's going to, I think, really change the way we communicate with non-English speaking communities. Some of our customers, so we're very proud to have some Colorado customers already, and hopefully working to have some more coming on pretty soon, and kind of continue across the country. So, Jeff, did you ever jump on? I'm going to let you talk about the next slide if you're there.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I'm having some connectivity issues. I'm hoping
Not a problem. We can hear you well, though.
That this comes through now. So one of the things that we've been looking at is how can we use the capabilities that we already have, i.e. text to 911, cloud native, texting and video. How can we do that and leverage other sectors, other spaces? So in Maryland, Maryland has 8 988 answering points. They're ultimately kind of funded and maintained by the United Way and Maryland211.org. And we're working with them and a couple other stakeholders to address a situation that we heard come out of Baltimore. And that was a call for a suicidal subject that rang into 988. They sent out a caseworker, a healthcare clinician to do a house call. And they knocked on the door. This is a 1099 contractor that's a healthcare professional. She's driving her own vehicle. She had only her own phone, and the person on the other side of the door had a gun. So how do we ensure that she has a lifeline? Well, this is a topic that's been discussed and is still being discussed pretty rigorously across the country around interoperability. We're seeing California, as an example, award a large 5-year contract to provide interoperability with a statewide 988 rollout. So we're going to be demonstrating a proof of concept that will ensure that that person, that clinician in the field, has the necessary resources to bail he or she out if they get into a jam. So we're going to demonstrate the way for a PSAP to communicate across the core 911 infrastructure, leveraging things like text to 911 to be able to create a request for a police response with a CAD entry, everything else, and delivering the real-time information from a device that the healthcare clinician will have as an app on his or her phone. So, as we've kind of been understanding the mental health space across the country, Colorado continuously comes up as kind of a thought leader around how to ensure that 988 is administered and deployed the right way. So stay tuned, but we're really excited. We've got a lot of support both from the state 911 board as well as the State Department of Mental Health and some legislative support and advocates all around. So we're excited to kind of see what this looks like and if it really truly does address this interoperability issue, to ensure provider safety. So we'll keep you in the loop. Thanks again for the opportunity, and we look forward to seeing any of you maybe next week at Navigator. Chris and I will be there. Chris, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. So does anybody have any questions for us or anything that we discussed that was, that they want to know a little bit more about or anything?
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for presenting for us. And this may have been something I just missed, but is your program over the top of a call handling solution, or is it a call handling solution on its own? How does that integrate?
Sure. It is roughly an over-the-top solution, depending upon the call handling. So we're not call handling by ourselves, but it can add on to the call handling. And we're working right now with an integration into Vesta. If you're a Vesta shop, we're building out some integration there, and we're working with some other call handling systems right now to have a more seamless experience. And that's the goal, right? Everybody wants one thing that does 6 things really well instead of 6 different things. And we completely understand that. So that's something that we're working towards. So the other part, if you're a Rapid SOS, we are a partner of Rapid SOS. So we come through Rapid SOS, their portal, single click, single sign on. One, if you're in the call in Rapid SOS, one click will pull us up, auto populate our platform, and you can go right into the messaging right there. So it's kind of we are not a standalone call handling, but we are able to integrate and able to be involved in a lot of the call handling solutions that are there now. If that answers your question.
That was perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is Jeff Urban. I have a question.
Sure.
So if someone, say, who speaks as a native Vietnamese speaker, initiates a text 911 message, does it take a certain phrase or number of words or something in order for it to detect the language and then be able to provide the translation?
Sure. So it doesn't take. There is no minimum on the words. It can do it off of one word. We have built a couple things into it, and actually, I'll let Jeff, if you're still there and want to answer kind of how it happens with the auto detect.
Yeah, sure. So just calling out, one gap that exists in the industry right now, and that is with the kind of overall FCC, rules, regulations around what the carriers need to support. This all has to do with character sets. The amount of bits and bytes it takes to transmit the letter A is different than the amount of bits and bytes it takes to translate a character in simplified Chinese. As a result, depending on some of the carriers, that might get chopped off. You don't get all the bits and bytes, and therefore you can't actually determine a translation. So we've taken all that into account. We're reaching out to Rapid SOS to derive device language. We're leveraging kind of an outside of the box, I'll call it a TCC workflow, but effectively, knowing that this language, these characters coming in can't be interpreted, let's prompt them over a channel that we can get that. So Once we do, we'll detect it. We run detection on every message, even though we may already think that we know the language based on one word, based on a device language data point. If that language changes, or if that one word may be translated into two languages, for example, hola. Hola can be translated into Spanish. It can be translated into Hawaiian. So making sure that we're not just relying on one phrase or one word, but continuously detecting, so that if the handset gets handed off to someone else, maybe we're taking that into account. And anytime we encounter something that suggests the language has changed, we're adapting to that in the workflow. We're making the call handler aware and prompting them around a change of language. But it's a continuously kind of monitored process by which each message is run through certain detection algorithms, and we're kind of keeping an eye on that and making sure that it's pinned to the correct language with every interaction.
Great, thank you. And one more
Thanks, Jeff.
question: Have you all worked with any of the emergency medical dispatch software vendors to kind of streamline the process of EMD instructions and make sure that they're interpreted correctly?
Yeah, we've had some conversations with ProQA and one other industry partner. We've not made any concrete steps or commitments one way or the other, but it's part of a workflow that we're continuing to enhance around kind of making the communication process as one click as possible. So being able to leverage templated messages that can then be stitched into a ProQA-like workflow. I suspect, by probably Q3, we'll be there in some way, shape, or form with some kind of a guided messaging workflow to kind of tie into that ProQA process that you have.
And one final question. This sounds very exciting. It's great. I'm glad to hear the technology's evolved from the way it is. I assume you guys are not enough for profit. So is this a software as a service kind of thing? And do you base it on size of the agency, or how do you base your costs and pricing?
Yeah, this is a software as a service. There's no on-premise hardware requirements, period. So we are well outside of your network. We're providing this service. We are basing it around the size of your agency. So based on annual calls for service, puts you into a bucket. Conversely, you may be more familiar with a seat-based license, net. It is effectively the same, but we're looking at size of agency, and all functionality and features, including users, messages, etc., are included in that one site license. So full functionality, unlimited capabilities, priced according to the size of your agency.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome.
Jody has a hand up.
All right, Jody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Couple questions, and my apologies for jumping on late. You may have covered this already, but will the system, does it recognize the language last used from a number? So, for example, if a text back is necessary, will it automatically select that language based on the phone number's history?
Yeah, we what we do is assign a language to that phone number. So that phone number, once we have that first communication with that phone number, we're going to know that language, whether it's coming from the data point of Rapid SOS giving us that language, or just our auto detect. We're going to know that language, and then the subsequent times that we have communications with that number, we're going to be in that language. So if it's a text back a day later and we're following up on something, that text is going to go in their language. Or if it's the next time that they text in to your agency, whether the 911 number or a non-emergency number, it'll automatically understand. It'll automatically know the language of that phone number. And that actually goes from it's the only thing that goes from what we call a tenant to tenant. So if we set up a certain tenant in a PSAP, and then they travel to the town down the street who's got us running in their PSAP, it will that language attached to that phone number will actually go from tenant to tenant.
Yeah, I was going to reference Arapahoe 911
Yeah.
Authority. Good example. There's 7 or 8 agencies. They're all using Convey. If that 911 call rings down to the neighboring agency, that data point will be available, and that neighboring agency will start the conversation in the last known language of that caller.
Okay, great. And then again, apologies if you've already covered this in the
That's
beginning of
fine.
the presentation.
Okay.
Is there an ASL feature? So for example, will it transfer to some sort of video with an interpreter in those types of cases?
Yes,
Okay.
we have part of our, what we call Convey Connect, which is our human-based interpreter service. Part of that has video for both all ASL, Spanish Sign Language, and I believe Japanese Sign Language, if I remember right. But all of those would be a video session that would be available to either the call taker in the PSAP or a responder in the field would have the ability from their mobile device to bring up that video session with an ASL interpreter. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Stop sharing. I'm going to come back here. All right, guys. Well, I think that covers it. And, please reach out to us if you have any more questions. If you want to see another demo and kind of go through the actual demo of the platform. I know we didn't have time for it here today to actually show you a demo of how it's working, but we're more than happy to set that up with anybody who wants to see it completely end to end. We're happy to show that. And if you're going to be at Navigator next week, Jeff and I will be there. I think we're booth 419. Love to have you stop by, say hi. And then also Jeff and Colleen will be back out at Colorado APCO NINA in May. So they'll have a booth there, and they're doing a speaking engagement at that one also. So again, from all 4 of us, we really appreciate the ability to be here and to talk to everybody. And we look forward to talking to you and working with you guys in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for presenting to us, and thank you for supporting our state conference.
Absolutely.
Stay safe
All
out
right.
there.
Take care.